All right. Good morning, good evening, good night, depending on where you are located. Welcome to our Jamesway Wednesday webinars. Today, we're glad to have Mauricio Carvajal. So Mauricio is from Colombia. He did he studied veterinary medicine from the SES University. And after he did an MBA from the EAFIT University. Mauricio has joined us since 6 years ago, right?
Yes, correct.
And he has been 2 years with us in the consultant team. So previously he had the Latin American territory, and now he is under the North American territory. So Mauricio, welcome. I'm so glad to have you today here.
Okay, thank you so much, Carolina. Remember to say to the people of the Spanish version.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. So to everybody, we have translation. So at the bottom, you will find like a globe, like a round. You can press it, and then you can go over Spanish speakers. Also, if you want to do a question, you can write a question on that box that is on the underline, and we will be glad to answer all your questions. Now I'm gonna say it in Spanish, so the Spanish speakers can also know this information. Bienvenidos a todos, dependiendo de dónde estén ubicados. Bueno, si están en Europa, buenas tardes. Bienvenidos a nuestro webinar de los miércoles. Hoy tenemos a Mauricio Carvajal, quien va a dar la presentación. Recuerden que en la parte de abajo tenemos la posibilidad de hacer la traducción, bien sea en español o en inglés, y también podemos hacer las preguntas y las preguntas y podremos responderlas en la parte de abajo, en la cajita de Q y A. Entonces, pues bueno, sin más preámbulos, Mauro, bienvenido. Mauro, welcome, and all the people are in your hands. Today we have a nice topic, because I think it's a topic that it involves every hatchery in the world.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Okay, so I'm glad to be here. This is part of my job, so I like the people start to invite me to these webinars on Wednesday. And let's get started with the topic what we have today. I'm gonna share my screen. Please, Carolina, confirm if you can see my screen.
Yes, we can see it.
Gotcha, perfect. Okay, so the topic we're gonna have today is gonna be the enhancing the biosecurity and hatcheries through the effective sampling practices. This is a talk we're gonna use the terms hatchery a lot, obviously, but we're gonna talk about the biosecurity as well. So we're gonna start with that. But let's start with the hatchery, because the hatchery plays a fundamental role in the poultry sector, and therefore is very important, but also is vulnerable. So you have to check all the links that you have on the hatchery to secure that process. Remember, we are talking about hatcheries, and as self, the hatcheries can incubate chickens, but I can incubate a lot of things too. So we must keep that in mind when we are working on the nature, because, well, this poultry is working with the nature itself. So especially when we talk about the biosecurity topics, in the hatchery, that biosecurity can be compromised with a bunch of reasons. We're gonna check that reason over here too. But normally, as an hatchery, you're gonna receive fertile eggs. That is our raw material for us. So normally, when you have a raw material like that, you will depend about the biosecurity that all the company had at the moment. From the breeder farm, we receive those eggs. If those eggs are in a good shape, you will incubate a good shape eggs. You're gonna have a good shaped chickens, and you can send good shaped chickens to everywhere. But in any case, when you have an issue in one of those breeder farms, and that issue come to your hatchery, you're gonna start to spread that problem to the rest of the company. So I use the breeder fan in this case for an example, but the problem can be start on the hatchery as well. So that is why this process is so important in the incubation production or the poultry production actually. And oh, sorry for that. So that is why we said in the biosecurity, a chain is only as strong as the weakest link. See, if you have an issue in one of your links, you're gonna have an issue in your process or your chain. So you have that, keep that in mind when we are talking about biosecurity. So let's define biosecurity as well. Having defined the concept of the hatchery and the importance of the biosecurity and that, we have take the idea of the biosecurity as well, which is essential. And that is why we are here in this presentation today, right? So the biosecurity refers to everything that the people, everything to people do to keep disease and viruses and bacteria, fungi, and parasites or other microorganisms disease away from the birds property or the people itself. So you have that you need that have that in mind. Although as many of us know what that means, it does not except for us that sometimes suffer from some tunnel vision. The tunnel vision is when you have a result in your horizontal or your side. In having that in mind, you start to forget some details or some problems that can be happening in your hatchery, even under your nose. So that is why you have to always check the critical points on your hatchery to avoid that fire start and not start to be that kind of hatchery that just put away the fires and don't work on the preventive security. So a look of the security we have, or the concept of the biosecurity in many cases summarize on this fact that we assume they're from the beginning, they are there in the hatchery from the beginning and from the hatchery is built. So because, well, we think is if the hatchery was built with those details, so the facility is prepared for that, but well, we have a lot of contaminants or the contamination come from different sources during the oral process. We can come from the air. So that's why we always have these specialized buildings, building with panels or with systems who keep all the external air outside of the hatchery. So we have these HVAC units who filter that air to give them that biosecurity that what we need to our process. But remember, sometimes that isolated buildings have issues, have broken walls. Maybe somebody left the door open. Maybe the HVAC is in bad shape or the filters of the HVAC is in bad shape. So we start to have these sources enter to the hatchery. The check boxes that accessory that everyone has when sometimes that check boxes are made from plastics. When the check box is plastic, remember they have to come back to the hatchery. So in some cases that boxes came to the hatchery plant again of our hatchery. So we can handle it carefully because that came from the farm. So we dispatch the chicken first time. Watch out with that because sometimes that came with contamination. We have to have a protocol to receive that check boxes too. The eggs, obviously, that is their raw material. From the eggs, always can contaminate. So normally we have protocols to disinfect those eggs. Sometimes we have a protocol to receive that eggs under our hatchery and we disinfect it inside. Whatever you whatever you have in your hatcheries, but the thing here is you have to be secure that those eggs come in good shape. The people, all the busy we have sometimes are our consultant team, sometimes or some guests we who invite to our hatcheries, but the most of the time is the people or the person that work inside of that hatcheries. who can bring any kind of issue if we don't have a correct protocol to biosecurity, his clothes, his way to take a shower in case you have a shower entrance in your hatchery. So keep all that in mind. I'm gonna start to explain those topics after this slide, but I like to make an introduction about everything we're gonna see here. The water, watch out with the water sources. Sometimes we have a water source in our hatchery, always trust in that water source, basically because they maybe came from the city, maybe came from the mountains or something, but remember, if you have a water source, you have to check it often to evaluate if that water have the quality accepted for a hatchery to work in a hatchery in this case. Remember the pest. We have a lot of things inside of the hatchery, starting for the eggs. And when the eggs cracks or the eggs drop, go to the floor, that start to attract all kind of pests on our hatchery. And normally when we do that visit on the hatcheries, we see these little control units to the pet, to any kind of pets and pest in our hatchery, but how often we check that units for was in a good shape, still have venom. So we have to start to evaluate all those things. Remember, the trucks and the supplies is the big unit to go outside from your hatchery and come back. So yeah, we have this beautiful hatchery and we see here in the photo that have a perimeteral wall to defend us with a lot of pests or a lot of issues. But sometimes those arcs who disinfect those trucks is not in a good shape. It's not working for a long time. Maybe the people who put the disinfect product inside of those tanks is not working in that day, so he forget it, or the tank is dry for a year now. So everything is working in your hatchery is a question you always have to have in mind. So can we control everything? This is a big question what we ask ourselves because, well, normally we have a lot of process in a hatchery, but we have this vision, this tunnel vision, looking just the results. And we start to forget to monitor those chicks or the airflow inside of their hatcheries or outside himself. Remember that eggs come from the farm, is mounted in a vehicle, on a truck, and the truck coming into the hatchery. And so you have that everything in mind when you are talking about biosecurity. Monitor your SOPs. All the hatchery have the SOPs, a big book in your office. Sometimes it's full of dust because, well, the people get used to it to work in the hatchery and they already know all the process, but sometimes don't. Sometimes they start to forget it, they start to make the easy way to do the things and start to forget those special details who defend us and in any case and any issue that we can probably have in our hatcheries. The troubleshooting list. This presentation is gonna help you with a troubleshooting list because, well, we have troubleshooting, an enormous troubleshooting list for solve all the problems with the machine itself. But sometimes the machine is just part of the hatchery. But we have all the environmental with eggs, with chicks, with pests, because pests is part of the environmental around the hatchery, never inside. I hope never inside, but the pest is coming around and outside of the hatchery. So you have that in mind and what we can do to fight these things. We have personnel in charge. Sometimes we forget that. I mean, when I was a hatchery manager time ago, normally you try to do everything in your hatchery, but sometimes that overwhelming you because, well, you are checking the result, but you have to check the profiles, you have to check the egg quality, but you also have to check the biosecurity, all the SOPs. You have to check the people get the correct implements and when they are trying to enter to our hatcheries. So you have that everything under control. So sometimes it's better if you pass the torch to the rest of your team. somebody put somebody in charge of those things to maintain everything under control. Remember, we are working in a natural procedure. The incubation machine or incubation hatchery is part of the nature, and the nature is unpredictable, and the microorganisms of the pathogens are everywhere. So you have that in mind. I like to use some practical examples when I'm doing my presentation, because when this example, you start to see if that could be happening in your hatchery. And I like that because sometimes the better consultant is ourselves when we have this critical view about everything we do inside of the hatchery. So always we want this. All the personnel in the hatchery wants this kind of eggs, perfect eggs ready to be set in our machines. Obviously, because we want to avoid, or we try to avoid this presentation on our breakouts, residual breakouts, right? That's why we start to avoid this kind of eggs and take that out to just try to protect your process, correct? But remember, those eggs came from sometimes from the soil, sometimes that eggs was dirty before, and somebody cleaned it up. It's a normal procedure. Let's say normal because some companies are pretty mandatory about what have to do with dirty eggs, but some companies don't. Some other companies accept that on their hatcheries, so somebody can clean it out. So the result is cannot avoided in that case. Everybody knows that. Okay, everybody knows it. Maybe one of these eggs came with a bacteria inside and that incubate. And after the incubation, you're gonna have this presentation and your embryo breakouts. That's okay. Almost everybody knows. So if everybody knows why we are still seeing this when doing our visits, sometimes the people say, well, but it wasn't an accident. I know accident can happen sometimes, right? But you have to check that out because, well, maybe the place that that accident happens can compromise your biosecurity in your machines. Why? Because, well, that happens in the side of your machines. And remember, your machines are working with the airflow. And if you have those kind of contamination inside your machine, you're gonna start to spread all around, even your ventilation in some cases, because, well, with the dampers or with the ventilation system itself of the machine, you can start to spread that bacteria or that fungi or that whatever, you name it. You can spread everything here. So you have that in mind. Another practical example is the clothes that will be used inside of the hatcheries. Sometimes, the most of the time, we have this presentation of the clothes. We have a good-looking guy with a correct, proper clothes that we use inside of the hatchery, but sometimes not, right? Sometimes we have these kind of guys working around our hatcheries, and that is okay because at the end, this is not the correct way to have clothes inside of the hatchery, but sometimes that happens. Okay, let's make it work in this way. But remember, you don't want to open those doors, right? Remember always the biosecurity or the chain is as strong as a weakest link that we have. So this is a risk. You want to take a risk? Okay, up to you. But somebody gonna tell you sometimes, hey, watch out with that things. But it's not the only precaution that you wanna have when you are using correct clothes, because, well, we can have a good uniform. We can must or keep it in a good condition, correct washing, correct fabrics, and easy to clean. So, well, you have you have this presentation. So you are perfect in this moment, right? But sometimes we have this presentation too. You have a good uniform, but the uniform is not washing properly. Maybe we have contamination on our uniforms. Maybe some guy doesn't wash his uniform, or the company doesn't wash the uniform properly, and you start to spread again all the bacteria and all the fungi, because you are part of the problem too. You are carrying the problem to the rest of the incubation. And let's go to the rest of the hatchery, because well, we have this presentation on our hatcheries. Our hatcheries have the airflow perfectly because we'll be do an effort to do it properly. If we have a personal flow too, I mean, the people who is working in the clean area, let's call it clean area because came from the egg room on the incubator and on the setters rooms. The people are working there never go to the dirty area. The dirty area is where we have all hatchers and the chicks when we are having a hatch or we have, let's say, in a production time, right? So the people normally knows you cannot jumping around the both areas when the process is working, but sometimes the people forget that, and the people or the personnel start to come all over to the clean area after to be in the dairy zone. I mean, some cases the people was working on the waste room, and after that go to the egg room for some reason because well maybe forget his pen or something. He was to walking all over the incubation plant or hatchery, and you start to see all the issues coming all over to you because well you are spreading the old bacteria, right? And here is the importance of the handling the color code on your clothing. I like a lot that measure when you have a color clothing and in your hatchery, you get able to recognize if one guy of the dairy zone with a, let's say, a brown uniform is walking through the clean zone where you have to use a white uniform. So that is a good way to start to separate the dairy zone from the clean zone and try to avoid that counter flu or that flu that can compromise your biosecurity. Another practical examples. I like to, a lot to use this example on my presentation because, well, sometimes we have this, we need humidity in our process. Everyone has that kind of humidity machines. Maybe it's sprinkles on the ceiling, or maybe it's another equipment like a Benson. But remember, if you start to have issues or maintenance issue with that kind of equipment inside your hatchery, you'll start to see these kind of problems. Maybe some handles on your darkest way of your hatchery, because when it's in the hallway, everyone is in the puddle on the hallway or something, so somebody gonna clean it up eventually, I hope. But sometimes we have leaks everywhere, and one of those leaks is behind, maybe in the plenum or something. And the plenum is not that bad, but it's bad though. So when you have this kind of presentation, when the maintenance on your equipment is not that good, you start to suffer the that moisture is attract all type of kind of bacteria. Remember that too, that's kind of equipment because this equipment depends of the water that we have here in the tanks. Normally that water change because well it's evaporate and use it for create that humidity that we need. But sometimes on the some months of your during the process on I mean some months of the year where the climate or the weather outside your hatchery is good enough and humidity or the have high humidity, this kind of equipment start to work, start to stop. Oh, sorry, this equipment stop to working. You leave it, just turn it off and leave it there. And remember, they have a stagnant water in those tanks, and you have leave it around too much time there. They start to develop all the bacteria inside those tanks. So you have that in mind at the time when you are start all over again and you turn off the equipment again, they're gonna use that water you leave there time ago. So the big thing here is remember. I know I have repeated a couple of times during the presentation until now, but we have to that clear. We are in a hatchery, and the hatchery has all the parameters like temperature, turning, humidity, and ventilation have good quality chicks, right? That is all result. That is what everyone's want when you enter to the hatchery. But the temperature could be warm, and the humidity can be made humid environment. And if you will set like something like we can find inside the hatchery, like dark corners, that hatchery start have a problem with all the bacteria. This is the perfect weather for a storm in your hatchery because well you have the warm, you have the humidity, you have the dark corners who nobody gonna clean ever. So there is gonna your bacteria gonna start to spread to the rest of your hatchery, and that is what we have to try to avoid. So we have some enemies in our hatchery. When let's start with the E. coli. E. coli is the is a natural habitat of the gut of the poultry. Normally, the people in the hatchery always says we have E. coli, we have a problem with the E. coli, the E. coli this, the E. coli that. Well, because the E. coli is let's see, it's everywhere, right? But watch out with the E. coli. Yeah, it's part of your you will find that in your hatchery, but you have to control it because if that take advantage, start with the problem like colibacillosis, they're gonna start to produce a lot of mortality, deaths, economic loss on the poultry, obviously, and it's really difficult to combat when it's already planted in your hatchery or your poultry facilities. So you always have to fight with E. coli. But it's not the only one. Remember that we have a streptococcus too. It's an opportunistic, it's not enter itself only. Normally, when the another bacteria is affecting you, like the E. coli, the streptococcus can enter like a secondary. So normally that is why he works. So watch out. It's not only the E. coli, we have the streptococcus, we have also another one like staphylococcus too. Is worldwide, causes early mortality in your poultry, normally with a respiratory route. So you have a lot of things that can mess you with your results. And you don't want that. You only want good results. Looking for that, you start to open your mind, avoid that vision tunnel, and start to check everything in your hatchery. Another hatchery enemy, pseudomonas. Pseudomonas causing high mortality on the chicks. Normally start on the first week after we send it to the farms. So maybe that's one way to start to suspect if you have pseudomonas in your hatchery. And watch out with this one in particular because it can spread from the water. Normally, we already talked about the whole humid is our hatcheries. So you have that in mind. We have a lot of things who use water inside of the hatcheries, starting for the humid equipment that I already showed you. So any stagnant water can be probably a place where the pseudomonas start to spread. Mm, it's very common on the hatcheries. In fact, I have a personal history with this pseudomonas. This bacteria here causes a problem in the hatchery where I was a hatchery manager time ago. It started because I saw it when I started to saw the huge problem we have on the farms. So it was after the hatchery process. And that was detected for the laboratory. We have a laboratory back then, so they detected and say, well, we have a problem with pseudomonas. I'm gonna start to look in that pseudomonas everywhere. I check every tank on the hatchery. I check every hose on the hatchery. It was crazy. I was looking that everywhere, and I don't find where the pseudomonas is. But the funny part is I never see it in the hatchery, but I see it in the chicken. So I say, well, have to be here, but where? one day I was just walking through the hatchery and saw the, well, that was this guy was part of my personnel using a foam machine, that machine to make detergent, who makes the detergent with water to make foam and to disinfect inside the incubation machine, the plastic accessories. So this guy is looking the tank every 5 minutes or so, and when he start to see how the tank is for the half or less, he put more water on the same tank and just adjust the doses. I say adjust, but he never checked the doses of the detergent that he was using it. So that was the problem. I checked that tank. The tank was dirty, a lot, was crazy. I make a sampling from there, and obviously I found the source of that pseudomonas was taking all my problems and was making all my problems in the hatchery. So you always have to do in that extensive monitoring. The pathogen can be anywhere, so be creative and start to check whatever, anything or everywhere actually. And always check the doses on the people who works with those machines too, because well, that is the principal responsible of about the good process on those machines. All the machines have all those machines have a maintenance. You have to check that out too. The Aspergillus, everyone knows about the Aspergillus. It's fungical. Actually, when I was checking the embryo breakout or the residual breakout on our hatcheries, the people get used to call any mold as Aspergillus. Not every mold found in the hatchery is Aspergillus, but let's say it's a good guess because, well, in case you have Aspergillus, you will have a pretty serious fungal infection disease in your hatchery. So always check the gas pin on your chicks, the chick room, even in the farms, because, well, the Aspergillus is a mold, obviously, it's a fungi, but it can be everywhere in your hatchery. Why? Because, well, you have the correct warmth for his spread, the correct humidity, and if you have a dark space where nobody looks before, it's gonna be there. So Aspergillus in poultry is too often. Nobody knows about the Aspergillus, so everybody don't want that in the hatchery. So watch out with the Aspergillus. And the last but not least, the Klebsiella affect your baby chicks too. Easy to spread if and affect your poultry directly, causing cellulitis in turkeys, for example. So that bacteria can be is started in the poultry now. So you have to take care of that too when you are trying to find any kind of bacteria, any kind of fungi you have in your hatchery itself. So why we are doing sampling, why we are here, we are listening this presentation. Well, the people start to do sampling when somebody tell them to do it, right? Or SOP, that is okay. I mean, the SOP says have you take samplings, just start to do it, but it's good to check the results of that and analyze if our process is being followed as directed. Sometimes as local entities, in some countries, the government says you have to take that samples in your hatchery and send the results to the government to try to keep good biosecurity as a country. So normally the people start to do something with that, but normally and sadly is the most of the people have started to doing something after they have a problem. If you start to find bacteria or mold in your residue breakouts, you start to do sampling. Or if some pathogens start to affect you directly with your results or the farm results, you start to look or take samplings everywhere. So this is not a good reason, but it's a reason that most common. I like this one to review my processes. my procedure, sorry. So all the areas have been cleaned and disinfected properly. I don't know. I want to evaluate that. So I'm gonna start to sampling to check if everything is clean and disinfected on the correct doses and the correct way, all those things. Equipment and supplies maintained properly. Normally, if you have this, let's say, check it, and you are doing a correct use of your products, or disinfection products, or detergents, that's disinfectant material to do a correct disinfecting. Sorry for repeat that too. That's perfect, but sometimes the people do that correctly, but when they start to maintain it properly, or they put it in a storage or something, and the storage is contaminated, you start to lose that good quality you made in the past steps. So that have in mind is not just doing the things properly, is maintained properly too. I must create healthy environment for my staff. Remember, the staff is part of the incubation too. You have to that have in mind. The people is working in your hatchery are exposed to that aspergillus, are exposed to those bacteria, so that can make some disease too. So that place, if you are gonna take samplings to maintain a correct or healthy environment, is a good tip that I can tell it to you. The best results coming from the people who ownership that process. Remember when I say put responsible for that processes, when we do that, that person is gonna appropriate uh, those samplings and gonna do it in a good way. What I should check? Well, consider the following question: where the pathogens can affect me, where the embryo is, and where the chicks is stand when we start to make our process. So remember the hatcher baskets. Remember to your egg rooms, your hallways, your machine itself. Don't forget your vaccines. The people who prepare the vaccines too. You can have a correct uh, preparation process in your SOP. But if the guy who made this vaccine is not doing correctly, you'll start to spread any kind of problem in your hatchery. So remember that where my chickens are, where my embryo is, where I hold them. So if you have that in mind, you know where I have to take the samples. We can measure the cleanness. Yeah, we can do it. Normally, we always do that visibly clean. The supervisor, the manager, go walking around the hatchery, checking if everybody is working, everybody is doing the proper process in your hatchery. So when they see something clean, say, well, that's that clean because they don't see any residue or any fluff or any problem, contamination problem in their machine. But is microbiology clean? Well, I don't know, because you cannot see the bacteria in your machine. You have to take a sample. So that is why we start to do the samplings. Why we sampling? Because we test the equipment after the cleaning and disinfection. Remember that disinfectant have to be dry. Sometimes the people just spread the disinfectant and take the sampling. Obviously, nothing is gonna grow there because, well, you are throwing disinfectant on the agar. Well, it's not the correct way. You have to dry, but also you have to swab after the shakes or after the machinery is clean. Because if you take before, obviously you're gonna find a bacteria because, well, the chicken are nature is dirty, and you will find something there. So be creative, but be objective too, right? You have to check what sampling and doing correctly. Determine your level of satisfaction for your hatchery to evaluate if your practices is gonna be good shape or not. The materials that we use, normally we use TSA plates. Blood agar is acceptable as well. This is Tectonic soy agar. This agar is recommended because, well, normally we're gonna grow many of the bacteria we have or we find on the hatchery, yeast, and molds too. So this is the most common plate that we're gonna find. Is the color is yellowish. Actually, it looks like a SDA, but the difference between this one and the SDAs will be then the sabro dextrose agar plates. We only gonna grow yeast and fungi. So these plates have inhibits the bacteria growth, so it's more specific for yeast or fungi. Remember that because sometimes on the hatchery they run out from the TCA plats and start to using SDA plats only, and you only will find fungi. That is important too, but if you ignore all the bacteria, like if you start to ignore all the bacteria, well, you will have an issue there. The rest of the material what we use is our containers and swabs. Remember, both have to be sterile. If they don't, they're gonna have bacteria inside. If you use, let's say, a crazy example like a Coke recipient or something like that, well, you will grow a lot of things that make that happen or that be had inside. So always try to do, no, always try not. You must do sterile swabs and container when you are taking the samples. You can use a pipette as well in case they are taking waters. Just only to take a little amount of the sample you have. We are talking about water samplings. I'm gonna tell you that after. But when you are trying to do liquid handling, using a pipette is the best way to do it because, well, sometimes when you are trying to use with pulse, well, you can commit some errors there. Always leveling all your plates or your containers or your swabs because, well, you have to remember where you take the sampling when you do it. If you have done it, you can evaluate that. After that, you will have the records and say, well, we have the date leveling, we have the location for the leveling, and we have the value for the results, and we can check if our process is in a good shape or not. So always level your materials before to take the sample or after, doesn't matter. But the thing is you need that information when you start to analyze your process or your results. In case you have the incubation machine inside of your hatchery, incubation obviously for the agars, you can set it on 37 Celsius or 98.6 Fahrenheit for 48 hours. Lid side down, agar up. That's gonna prevent the humidity affect the results. So this is the correct way to do it. Remember, it's a laboratory, so you have to be clean. You have to use your PPEs. You need everything controlled there in your laboratory who have correct results, and after that have a good analyzed process of your results as well. In case that you don't have the incubation machine in your hatchery, well, sometimes you have to send it to some other place, maybe to the laboratory itself. So please use transport agars. Is another kind of agars that you need to use in case you're gonna transport that samplings. Avoid any kind of humidity or contamination in your samplings, obviously. And always try to be secure that samplings to not open during the transport or something because, well, if they open it, you have to discard that sampling because we're obviously gonna have a contamination result. The way to sample, normally we can use the egg. The egg sample is rolling the egg across the plate directly, the agar, the plate that we showed you before. Not a big fan of this kind of sampling because, well, you can using a swab to the eggshell. Well, I'm not a big fan because, well, the people get used to it to roll all the egg from the plate. And if you roll the egg where you are handling the egg, well, you're gonna take a hand sampling too. And that is not correctly. So normally I like to use swabbing on these ones. On in case you don't have the swab and you wanna go in directly, try to use a contact plate. The contact plate is the same like a plate, but it's smaller and you can press the agar through the eggshell directly, and you're gonna avoid being rolling the egg from the part that you are handling. The air plates, we open the lid. Here's the technique. The plate is placed in the room or where you wanna check if the air is in a good condition. That helps that to the ventilation ducts too. You can leave it a plate inside of the duct in case you want to check if your ventilation have a problem or not, if your filter is working. So you'll leave the plate without the lid, leave it for 5 minutes, more or less. And after that, put the lid back again. And remember the condition you have to storage that plate to avoid any contamination. Here's an exposition time. I leave here for you because, well, normally we can start with 5 or 3 or 5 minutes, but if the bacterial grows, actually you can start to 5 to 10 minutes. In case you have a lot of grow in your plates, you can start to reduce that waiting time after you solve that issue. The precaution obviously is leave a dish exposed to the environment. I mean, we have to do that, but remember that agars maybe have an aroma and can attract bugs or rodents. So it's normal. It's not normal, but in some case, when you leave that air plate on the floor or something, you will find some bugs inside. So try to avoid that too. But obviously, you have to expose the agar to the air to have a sample there. The contact place, I already told about the contact place, works like the air plates. I mean, actually the same agar, just in this case is smaller and have a small amount of agar you can put against the part that you're gonna take the sampling. You can sampling the basket after the big cleaning and dry. Remember, dry the hands of the people are working on or the vaccination procedures or vaccination preparation. You can check that hands with this kind of agar. It's gonna be easier for you because, well, you are exposing the agar directly to the sampling. So that is the way that it works. Also, the storage egg. You can check the storage egg in case you are doing disinfection, just for checking if the disinfection is working correctly. So you can check before and after disinfection. That works a lot in the hatcheries to check if your eggshells have bacteria or fungus coming over your transportation or the farm or breeder farms. Swab contact, that is the most common sampling in every hatchery, is just passing the swab over the surface that you're gonna sampling. And after that is swab the agar to pass your sampling to the agar and wait for the results, right? Some of those swabs has transportation agar that's really great in case you have to send the sampling to anywhere, like another laboratory or something. So that had in mind in case you're gonna do the swabbing, but you have to send that test to a laboratory or something. Normally, the swab contact is pretty common because it's easier. a lot of people doing this one because, well, you can test everything with that. You can test the surface, you can test the hands, you can test the eggs, even the grills on the HVAC, plastic accessories after the washing and leave them dry. Remember that? So that is why this is the most common way to do sampling in the hatchery. Water. This is a personal to me for the history I told you about the pseudomonas just testing the water that we use to clean our machines, clean our accessories, plastic accessories. Even though you can check here the vaccination, the vaccine after the prep and after the guy or the person who prepared the vaccine, you can take a sample of the vaccine and send it to the laboratory in case normally nothing have to grow there. But if something grows is because, well, maybe the person who are making the vaccine is touching the needle for some reason or have a leak of contamination somewhere. So this is a good way to test that out. You can also check your hose, your faucet, or include your wet bowl water. Remember, if you have a stand water in any place, you can check that if there is something growing there. So always that had in mind, okay? In that case, remember, it's just the water. Avoid to touch any other part with the recipient. That is why the pipette is so recommended in these cases because, well, you're gonna take a sample of that and put it in this recipient to send it to the laboratory. Fluff samples, maybe the only dry sample we take in a hatchery. And after the hatch, you can enter your hatcher machines and collect the fluff. That fluff gonna send it to the laboratory to presence of the bacteria or molds. And during this part of the process, is where your chick is gonna be held inside of the machine for a long time. So that is why we're taking this sample just for avoid if they are exposed to any kind of bacteria or mold. Remember, just collect empty in an empty machine, obviously, and a dry fluff. Avoid any wet fluff because you don't know what wet that will be meconium of the chicks, 1-day chicks, and if you incubate meconium, obviously you want to find a lot of things there. So try to do that too, in case you have some kind of issue there. So when it's choosing areas to sampling, think of everything a chick comes with contact with. If the navel can touch it, and that thing like a hatcher basket is contaminated, will have an infection on your navel. So remember belts, chutes, head holder on your automation equipment, clean chick box, hatch baskets, vaccine equipment or the vaccine itself. Remember the spray boxes. That is somewhere all those chicks gonna passing through. So it's better if you have clean and in a good shape. You will find bacteria potentially spread it and where don't clean properly, like dollies, baskets, some nozzles. So be creative, but objective too. Remember, if you are taking sampling of meconium, you obviously wanna grow something there, but be creative. It's looking good, looking because the bacteria hide very well. After that, analyze all the results because, well, when you analyze all the results and you save the collected information for the future analysis, generate your overall rates of normality lines to be able to compare yourself, improve your process if you're noticing that you are going to out of your normal lines and start to swapping or testing more often, trying to get improved, and obviously get a better result. The quality is a continuous improvement. When you reach the goal, you have to maintain it or improve it. And the conclusion is that analyze your collected information. That is vital, because when you are doing sampling, you have to check that out. No, it's not for, because, well, sometimes you are on the incubation, on the hatchery, and you see how they have a go SOP or good operation about the samplings and show you all the results. But if you as a hatchery manager never check the results, you doesn't know if you have a problem or if you have a major issue in your hatchery. So always check, analyze their information. If you don't have the time for that for any reason, that's totally understandable. So have a team to prepare or analyze that data and tell it to you as a hatchery manager. Because when you make whole team part of the test, the result is gonna be clearer and you never forget anything. And the best indicator of a good job is our chicks. If our chicks in a good shape and have a good result, you will have a good process and control management. So that is everything I have to you this morning or after.
Mauricio, thank you so much for your presentation. It was really, really interesting. We also received some congratulations from our customers, so nice job. Well, we have a couple of questions here. So the first, let's answer this first one, which is really interesting. Does single-stage incubators have an advantage over multi-stage incubators when it comes to bacteria loads?
Definitely, because, well, remember the single stage machine is all inside, all out. So when you set the machine, you always use a big pack of eggs, leave it there for 18 days, passing to the hatcher, and you now have a incubator machine totally empty. So the cleaning over there and the disinfection on this kind of the machine is going to be better than the multi-stage, because, well, when you have multi-stage machines, this accident can happen in the middle position, or in case you have a stance, you can have problem on the dip of the machine, and it's difficult to clean that out. But normally the people in those multi-stage hatcheries do is when the machine is empty, they take advantage of that process to doing maintenance, but doing correct cleanup and disinfection on whole machines. But day after day, yeah, the single stage machines got better conditions to avoid larger contamination in your hatchery.
Right, thank you so much. Another question is, how often do you recommend to do a sampling of water, eggs, or flooring? Or does this depend upon each hatchery or each company?
The people do monthly. I recommend monthly because, well, this kind of procedure is not that expensive, and a lot of companies have all the system to do it itself, so it's not that expensive either. So if you do it monthly, you will have a good lines of normality in your hatcher. With that, you can avoid major problems. In case you have a major issue, you can do it more often. Or if you are doing monthly and never detect anything, well, you can start to doing every 3 months or so, but I don't recommend less than that, more than that, sorry.
Okay. We have another one. What can I do if I have exploded eggs in the setter? Is it necessary to remove it immediately, or can we wait for the transference?
This
So
is
removing
always
egg bombs.
this is always a good question, because, well, that is the eternal monster that we have on the incubate and on the all hatcheries is, in case of your exploding eggs, well, obviously it's better if you take that out, but normally in a single stage machine, you cannot open for that reason. You have to wait, and it's okay. You can wait. The example that I used in my presentation was an extreme cows. Obviously, nobody gonna leave eggs there for too much time. But yeah, the response of your question is you can take that out without modify or have an issue in your incubation process. Do it. If not, well, you can leave it to the transfer. That reminds me, on the transfer, it's better if you have a bin or a garbage with some disinfect solution in case you are throwing those eggs, that exploded eggs or that contaminated eggs, throw it in that bin with uh, just a little bit of solution to try to avoid major contamination there in your transfer room or something.
All right, thank you so much. What is the Jamesway recommendation for cleaning multi-stage incubators?
Sorry?
What is how do we recommend to disinfect the multi-stage equipment on the
Oh,
Jamesway side?
okay. Multi-stage equipment. Well,
Yes.
We have already explained that when the machine is totally empty, try to do it a really well disinfection, cleaning up of the whole machine. The good thing on the Jamesway multi-stage machine is we have racks. So normally the eggs when crack or have an issue or explode eggs normally stay on the rack itself. So after the transfer, clean those racks too. And inside of the machine itself, sometimes we recommend using some candles or something. Always remember you have to check with your providers. The uh, disinfection product that you will use, you can use it with fertilizer. Watch out with that because I'm gonna say something crazy here, but if you try to use formaldehyde, for example, on multi-stage machines, watch out because on the first 3 days of hatching process or embryo development, the formaldehyde is really toxic. So watch out with that in case you want to use any product inside of the machine. But yeah, you now will find a lot of products you can use on fertilizer or even during the process. You have to be creative, and it's better if it's a dry product because well, you don't want to mess that out with humidity.
Here we have like a really interesting question because it has a large impact. So do we have any recommendation for cleaning program for ventilation?
The ventilation is it's a big thing here because well, all the incubation, all the hatcheries have ventilation, obviously. Well, not all, but the most of it. So you have to check what kind of ventilation you have. Remember, one of the rooftop units using 100% fresh air. In those cases, well, you are secure that those dogs that you have inside of your hatchery are clean normally. But other kind of ventilation, recycling the air that you have in the room. And in case you have a problem in the room, you're gonna have it in your hatchback too. In those cases, it's better to talk with your supplier if you can open the ventilation equipment in case of the duct, leave a little window where you can open without affect, obviously, the airflow and do a cleaning with a hose or something or taking sampling if you check if you have an issue there. So my plan or the plan I recommend is making sampling of those ducts or that equipment after the filter. And if you start to see issues, well, go to wash that part of the ventilation process, change your filters. Well, you can use, in these cases, I like the candles. I mean, the candle
Right.
is those
Totally
smoke
agree.
bombs with disinfection solutions, and you can use it on your HVAC to try to clean that out.
Great. Well, Mauricio, we had a lot of people. We had people from different places of the world. We had people from Egypt, Iran, Republic of Kosovo, Mexico, Panama. So thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Um, let's keep in touch for the next webinar, and we will answer your questions directly to the email that you wrote on the registration, because we have a lot of questions. So thank you so much, Mauricio. Thank you for all your knowledge, your experience, all the examples you gave us are really good. So let's keep in touch.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much, everyone, and have
And
a great day.
you too. Take care. Bye.